most of the people in this room, their hearts are broken by an epidemic of teen suicide that has swept across our city and across our county. And this is something that you've had personal experience with, and I just wonder if you would give us, where's the hope, and what can we do?
I think it's a very serious question, Jeff, and I think the thing is that oftentimes the danger is to think we understand every individual and why they are attempting that path. It is not so, and that's why, frankly, I think what you all do here at Summit and what Dennis does on his radio program and all is give answers to questions. And I'm sure anybody struggling with the meaning of life could listen and tune in or take your lectures, as one of my colleagues had one of your students' life transformed that way. First of all, let me say it is always important to make sure that some medical advice is given to a young person struggling with that. Don't minimize that, because sometimes there are psychological, chemical issues involved, chemistry, medication, all of this comes in, depression. And if you ignore that and just think the answer is simply a spiritual one, you may be wrong in that assessment. So it is very important to get those who deal with this address it correctly. Speaking for myself, I was not in that category. I was in the category of being a failure in a shame culture and with a very successful father, and embarrassed that I was not meeting the level that he was expecting of us. And now as I look back, it was not all wrong. It was just that the way I think he was going about it was hard on my personality. I have a very sensitive spirit, and to sort of drag my nose in the dirt didn't go well with me. Had it not been for my mother, I would not have made it. That's a fact. I lost both of them very early in life, and now I just think so much more of how much my dad sacrificed for me and my brothers and sisters. I was one of 5. But when you're failing and when there's no hope, I think that second statement is important. If you've lost hope and there is no bright sunrise tomorrow, but all you're living in the midst of doom and gloom, then you don't like what you are sensing in your heart, and you're failing, which is shame and embarrassment. You want to end it all. So whatever that reasoning took me, it took me onto a bed of suicide when I was 17. And I never used to talk about it. Even with my dad, we never really discussed it because it's an embarrassing thing to talk about. You're a loser. You didn't succeed, and you didn't even succeed in trying to take your life. But here's the point. When a young person is getting down and cast down and struggling with hope and shame, be there for them and let them know how valuable they are to you, and that there is always hope in the possibility of what God can do in your life. I am 73 now. 56 years ago, I was on a hospital bed trying to take my life, when a Bible was brought to me and John 14:19 was read to me. Jesus said to Thomas, "Because I live, you also shall live." I'd never opened a Bible before. I don't even know if my family owned one. They probably did, but I didn't open one. I'd never owned one. And to think that there was a possibility of life that I didn't understand in my own heart, that God offered this life, I just prayed a simple prayer. And I said, "Lord, if you are who you claim to be, the author of life, lift me out of this hospital bed, and I will leave no stone unturned in my pursuit of truth." I've told the story in my book, Walking from East to West. To me, that relationship with Jesus Christ, very critical. It's not just propositional truth there. It's a relationship with Christ. And how he pursued me into that hospital room, cared enough to send somebody to me to talk to me about salvation and hope and meaning. All the evidences in the world may be wonderful, but that God met me in my darkest hour and shone that light in my soul. When my father passed away, just before he did, he asked me to come and take him to the hospital. He had the premonition that this heart surgery is not going to be successful. My older brother was 10 minutes away from him. I was 90 minutes away from him, living in Niagara Falls. He phoned me and asked me to take him. I don't know what is going on. I said, Dad, if you're going in for heart surgery, Ajit's 10 minutes away from you. I'll come to the hospital, but I think you should have him take you. He said, no, I want you to come. And as we are driving to the hospital, I realized why he asked me. And his whole story was he never dreamed of what God had in mind for his son. And he just wanted me to know how sorry he was that he didn't see what God had seen and how his own life had been transformed by this. So I was the last one to see him alive, because in that bypass, this goes back into the late 70s, so in the early days of bypass, and it failed, and my dad died in the hospital there in Toronto. But folks, love your kids. Talk to your kids. Don't let them hibernate in the basement looking in front of a screen night after night. Take them out to a ball game. Talk to them. Tell them how important they are to you and how much hope you have in that individual, that God can see in them what even the human eye doesn't. You need that encouragement when your life is down, that this is not the last chapter of your life. God conquers not in spite of the mystery of pain, he conquers through it. And when you take them through that pain, you will see what God can do. So when I hear a kid talking about thinking of taking their own life, my heart cringes inside, because I know exactly that feeling. But I also know he is all triumphant, and the very resurrection is the key to unlocking what Calvary was all about. You go through Calvary, through the empty tomb, and he gives hope. Who would have ever thought that Thomas the doubter, to whom Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, no one comes unto the Father but by me, would go to India, which had 330 million deities? But he paid with his life. So I do think that the grand design of God will only be revealed when we stand before him and we'll say, I had no idea of the threads you were holding for my life. And thank God you were the craftsman to pull those threads together. I could never have done it on my own.
Wow, thank you.